Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's presentation about Florida State University system and what it takes to get in. I'm Judi Robinovitz, Certified Educational Planner, and I'm just delighted to welcome you here. We've been doing this as an annual tradition for many years, introducing the whole state university system and especially what makes each one of our state universities completely unique. So we are recording this so that there will be a follow-up and you'll be able to get a copy of this recording. We're on Facebook Live, we're on YouTube Live. And if you were to go to our website at any point, you'll find that there are a half a dozen different downloads for this webinar, things that will just reinforce some of the facts that I'm sharing with you this evening. You don't have to get them now, but you'll want to get them, I'm sure, sometime after this presentation. So this is just a map of the state of Florida with all 12 state universities showing how we are completely around the entire state. And it's very important to note that it's been a few years in a row now where the state university system of Florida by U.S. News & World Report has been ranked as the #1 state university system in the whole country. So things come in all different sizes and especially state universities so that you can see we go from teeny tiny, very personalized like New College in Florida Poly up to our very largest state university, University of Central Florida, which I believe is also the second largest state university in the country with almost 60,000 undergraduate students. So admission works in very similar ways across all 12 state universities, where the most important thing is going to be a student's actual curriculum, like especially rigor of curriculum and having a certain number of years of each core academic subject, as well as grades. And by the way, the grades that are used, the GPA that's used for admission to all 12 state universities, is not the one that is on your transcript. It is a recalculated core weighted GPA using very specific weighting, not the same as most high schools use. And in fact, we have a special place on our website that's just called recalculatemygpa.com, where you can recalculate your GPA to see exactly where it falls in terms of the ranges of our 12 state universities for admitted students. So it's not just SAT and ACT scores. We never did go test optional here in Florida. We always required scores, which sort of makes it a little bit less confusing in admissions. But very recently, our state board of governors has made a decision to accept the classic learning test in addition to either SAT or ACT. And then there's also holistic information, which has to do with primarily like with your essays, your extracurricular, how you present yourself on your application. So those are the key factors in admission to all 12 of our state universities. So I'd mentioned academics. These are the core academic units. These are full year units of what you must have in order just to be eligible to apply. And by the way, social science includes history, government, economics, psychology, human geography, philosophy, sociology. Very important to have English every year and math every year, even if you have finished your math requirement for high school graduation. Our state universities do want to see 4 full years and preferably all the way through senior year. Okay, so in order to be eligible for admission, you either have to have a recalculated core weighted GPA of at least a 3.0, and then it doesn't matter what your SAT or ACT score is, or if you have between a 2.5 and a 2.99, again, recalculated, then there are certain minimum SAT and ACT score requirements. We still do not know, it's not on the website yet, what the classic learning test, like minimum scores may be. But one of your downloads is a conversion chart between a concordance chart, actually, between SAT, ACT, and classic learning test. So what it's important to know about the classic learning test, in my opinion, I think it's an easier test than SAT or ACT. I don't know of any other state that has approved it yet wholeheartedly, let's say, for admission. This just happened a few days ago on September the 8th that our Board of Governors approved it for admission. It had been already approved for Bright Futures. It isn't just a 2-hour test. It tests pretty much the same types of things as SAT and ACT. You can actually get your score the same day. And I've given you 2 websites here. One of them is really comparisons between SAT, ACT, and CLT. And the other is the newspaper article or the CNN article that showed that state universities in Florida will now be accepting the CLT for admission. So, once a year, the 12 state universities travel around our state to give presentations in terms of what did their admitted class look like for this year, not their enrolled class, but their admitted class. And so we've condensed all that information for you, giving you the mid-range or the median or the mean, depending upon what the college did, but what it took to get in terms of GPA, SAT, ACT, and the admit rate. In most cases, this is for fall. The only time where it's overall, there are 3 schools that are starred and where the acceptance rate was given as an overall rate, not just for fall. We do have a call into FAMU because we're not sure that 19.5% is completely accurate, but we haven't received a call back yet to confirm that. So just like I showed you that each of our state universities sort of comes in a different size, well, they also come in a different level of competitiveness for admission. I've highlighted the 3, should come as no surprise, that are the hardest to get into: UF, FSU, and UCF. And then the 4 that are the least competitive in terms of admission. So our state universities have honors programs, and the way you get into an honors program is different for each school. So this screen just summarizes what the process is for each of our state universities that offers an honors program, in terms of whether it's an automatic acceptance or if you have to apply and how you apply. And in terms of applications, I believe last year may have been the very first year that all 12 of our state universities accepted the common application. Some of them have their own application as well, but trust me, it's so much easier just to use the common application, because the common application itself is used by over 1,000 universities around the world. And although UF and FSU were original members of Coalition, they no longer require it. So I would say don't worry about the Coalition application. Use the common application if you're applying to any of our 12 state universities. It's just much easier than applying using individual applications. So 10 of our 12 state universities have what's called rolling admission. And what that means is they don't wait until a particular date to start evaluating you and then making a decision on another date. First in, first out. As soon as your application is complete, it will be reviewed and decisions will be made. Those decisions can start being made probably, I'd say, by next month. UCF pushed back when it's going to start making decisions. It used to start them as early as October. I believe they'll be started later in November this year. But truly, the early bird gets the worm, as trite as that may sound. So very important for these 10 state universities to get your application in earlier, You'll find out faster. It'll be a bit easier to get in. And they all have a priority deadline date, and you really want to aim to get it in by that priority deadline date. One of the things that you're able to download from this presentation is our SUS chart that not only has that GPA, SAT, and ACT information that I just showed you, but also has the deadline dates and when admission decisions are made, and sort of whether you need an essay or what else you need. So that one page really gives you all the stats for all 12 of our state universities. In terms of deadline dates, you can see that they all have some kind of a deadline date, whether it's a priority date, an early action. If it's an early action, it basically means that if you apply by that date, you're going to get a decision on a certain date where everyone pretty much finds out at the same time. And I want to make it really clear that FSU, starting last year, had an early, and they have it again this year, an October 15th early action deadline date, but that is only for Florida residents. Florida Gulf Coast and New College also have early actions of November 1st, and UF has a firm deadline of November 1st. And what I've tried to do here is put the firm deadlines in green to say, hey, if you don't apply by that deadline and you get your application in later, the chances of your getting in are pretty slim. So just keep these dates in mind. And by the way, October the 15th is the earliest date that the National Association for College Admission Counseling allows, it sets guidelines, allows any college to have a deadline date. No one is allowed to have a deadline date anywhere, any NACAC member, before October the 15th. So for most of our state universities, you actually don't send an official transcript at the time that you apply. There is an online form called the SSAR, Student Self-Reported Academic Record, that is either required or recommended by most of our colleges. UCF has its own form called the SPARC, and Florida Gulf Coast and Florida International do not use a form. You're actually going to be sending an official transcript to those schools. But for the schools where you're sending the SSAR or the SPARC, that means that you're not sending an official transcript when you apply, but instead, if you're admitted and you decide to matriculate at that school, at that point, you're going to be sending an official transcript, and it will be the transcript that shows that you have actually graduated. So it's the one that's issued, after, a couple of weeks after school ends. So in terms of the SSAR, in order to fill that out, and I would strongly suggest that if you're applying to any of our state universities that requires that SSAR, that you have an official transcript in front of you, or unofficial, actually, that's just fine, an unofficial transcript, and mom or dad or a friend or sibling sitting next to you, where one person is typing and another person is reading off the exact course name, when the course was taken, what the grade was, if it was honors, AP, dual enrollment, ACE, any of that. I think it takes two people and one person sort of crossing off the ones that have been entered so that you're sure to get everything in there. It really is like a two-person job. And the first link on this page actually is the link to the actual SSAR. You could just Google, doesn't matter which one, University of Florida SSAR, and it'll take you right to that website. And it is the same SSAR for all of our state universities. So for all of our state universities that accept it, so that once you do it for one school, that same SSAR can be used for any of the other schools that accept it. And if you want, if you have a lot of questions about the SSAR, the bottom link on this page just gives you some wonderful information answering pretty much any question that you might have. And you may have heard that there's another form called the SRAR. It's from the same company. It's used by about roughly two dozen universities across the country. That now the SSAR and the SRAR are exactly the same. So let's just say that you're applying to Rutgers University in New Jersey. They require the SRAR, but you can use your SSAR for it, or vice versa. So that does make life slightly easier, but it does mean you're keeping track of, for most private universities are not using the SSAR or the SRAR. So in some cases, you're sending an official transcript. In some cases, you're filling out one of these online forms. Or you might be actually filling out a completely different online form. For example, if you're applying to any of the University of California, 9 state universities, like let's say UCLA or Berkeley or Santa Barbara, any of them, they have their own online A to G matrix where you're filling out essentially your courses and your grades. And then there are some colleges on Common App that actually require what's called the courses and grades page of Common App. So there's lots of different ways of sending, your academic record to a college that's not necessarily the official transcript until you're actually accepted and decide to go there. So I mentioned before that University of Central Florida stands sort of alone. They have their own form that was developed in-house. It's called the Spark. I know the K stands for Knights because they are the Knights. It does need to be submitted online before November 1st. And it's very similar to the SSAR. And, the link on the bottom gives you the instructions for it. But again, it's something you could just Google and, get to the instructions and get to the actual website. But I believe you have to submit your application first. And then after you submit your application to UCF, you get a link that is for your unique Spark. So it does work differently in that sense of how you access it versus the SSAR. To give you an idea of what the SSAR looks like, it's pretty straightforward. You're basically going to be listing your courses by, academic area. So this is, showing you like someone who's listed 9th grade, 2 semesters of English, 10th grade, 2 semesters of English, and where you can continue to keep, adding courses. And just to give you an idea of what it looks like to a college, this is an example that was shared with me from FSU to see, what is it that they see on their screen. And the color coding helps them tremendously, because if they see lots of pink on there, it means this is a pretty rigorous transcript, because the pink reflects a course that's for them, that's ACE, AP, or IB. This is their own color coding. You really, hopefully, if you're applying to FSU, you don't want to see too many that are yellow, other than perhaps non-core subjects, because the yellow just refers to an ordinary course. It could be an English course, a math course. It's not honors or AP. And with that, I'm going to get into, start getting into the 12 state universities in Florida. I will periodically pause for questions. I'll try to answer as many as I can, but I am going to go pretty quickly because this is a very long presentation, and I don't want you falling asleep. But remember, you'll be able to get the recording of it. So let's start, and we're doing them in alphabetical order. Let's start with FAMU, which is Florida's only state university that's a member of FGCU, the Historically Black Colleges and Universities. And it is actually the #1 public HBCU in the nation. Interestingly, it's in our capital, in Tallahassee, and it is the only city in Florida that has 2 state universities. FSU and FAMU are both in Tallahassee. And what I've tried to do for each of our state universities is give you an idea of sort of, where it's ranked in certain, unique areas by U.S. News and World Report. Basically giving you sort of the justification behind why the state universities in Florida were ranked the #1 public state university system, in the country. And I think some things in there are really super important, like the social mobility. How likely is that to, lift you up, propel you towards success, in life? So lots of pretty famous people have gone to FAMU, and they're very much also known, besides their famous alumni, for their marching band. It's probably one of the top marching bands in the whole country, and they've performed at places like Super Bowl and presidential inaugurations. Quite a few very, very strong and popular majors, especially things like nursing and architecture and engineering. And their engineering program is unique, by the way, because it is shared with FSU. It's on the campus of FAMU, but FSU does not have its own engineering program. So FSU students who want to major in engineering are actually taking their engineering courses on the FAMU campus. And the 3+3 law program basically refers to the ability to get an undergraduate degree and a JD, a law degree, in a total of 6 years rather than 7 years, so that your 4th year of undergraduate is actually your 1st year of law school. So you're basically you're studying in 6 years rather than 7 years. It's a pretty special program. So there's lots of new stuff on the FAMU campus, and in fact, you're going to find for each of our state universities, there's lots of new construction, either currently in progress or just, fairly recently completed. So our state is always spending money on improving its facilities, enriching the lives of students. So now moving to something that's a little closer to home, because I'm here in Palm Beach County, and so is FAU. And I would say that one of its most noted programs is the combined BS-MD program, which is incredibly competitive to get into. But it's a phenomenal program for a student who knows for sure that she wants to be a physician. And you'll see what the requirements are for admission, and it could make this as competitive as applying to any Ivy League university. So we have 2 different programs depending upon which FAU campus you're on. If you're the main campus in Boca, or the honors campus up in Jupiter, where basically you're getting both a bachelor's and an MD degree. But in order to even apply for it, you have to meet minimum requirements for, as you can see, for GPA and test scores. And you also have to have some patient interaction experience. Usually it's shadowing. And during COVID, that shadowing could have been virtual shadowing, not necessarily in person. Your extracurricular activities and your academics have to really reflect a commitment to let's say to service, to volunteerism, to leadership, and of course lots of STEM courses. Typically you're going to have AP Bio and AP Chem or ACE courses, because otherwise it's going to be a pretty difficult road once you're in the program at FAU. Anyway, the application process is actually a longer process, because you're doing more than one application. Besides the Common App, you're doing a special BS-MD application. There's additional essays. You need a resume. It's almost as if you're applying to med school. Not quite as hard. There's a lot more essays for med school. But what this gives you is almost, but not quite, guaranteed admission to the College of Medicine. It's conditional admission. Basically, you still have to take the MCAT, which is like, say, the SAT or ACT for med school, the medical college admission test. And you have to maintain a certain GPA while you are at FAU. And basically, if you achieve the right score, meet the benchmark for that and for the GPA, then you will absolutely be going on to doing med school. But you basically avoid the whole med school application process, which to begin with, primary application is at least 15 or 16 essays, and then there are secondary applications. You're basically bypassing all of that if you do this particular program. And this program can last 7 years or 8 years. 8 years is the typical undergraduate followed by med school. And just to give you an idea of how competitive it is, it's usually less than 15 students per year who are actually admitted out of mostly it's 50 to 75 kids who apply each year. And if you happen to be a National Merit finalist or scholar, there is priority for you. So the other thing FAU is really well known for is a direct admit nursing, which basically says it's not a pre-nursing program. You are starting nursing pretty much from day one. And these are the bare minimum requirements. You're not probably going to get in with just 3.6 unweighted and a 1200. It's usually more than that, but those are the minimum requirements to apply for it. And they only enroll 100 students a year, so it is very competitive. And FAU has been known now for several years for anything in the STEM field. And they do have a brand new hospitality certificate in casino and gaming industry management, which I think is pretty cool. They had a record 36,000 applications and over 4,000 new freshmen. And there is a new pathway program. You're going to hear every now and then Mike talking about pathway programs, which are sort of kids who are almost fully qualified, but not quite. So these are kids who are looking, for a STEM major essentially, but they may need some extra help in math. So you can be selected for one of these bridge programs. And this is the first year that FAU actually inaugurated a November 1st priority deadline, probably because the number of applications has really been soaring there. And just a couple of cool things about FAU. Some of it is its rankings, again, recognized for the social mobility, recognized for its nursing program, and 15 for computer science. You may say, well, wow, that's 215. That's not that high. Well, it is when you consider that there's probably well over 1,000 colleges that offer a computer science major, which today has become sort of the most competitive major to get into in most colleges. But of course, the really, really cool stuff about, FAU is that they made it to the Final Four in basketball. My prediction is that admission is going to be much tougher this year for FAU because of how well a basketball team has done, and that students all over the country who are big basketball fans will now have found that, FAU is really on the map for them. If you walk on the FAU campus, you will be amazed at some of the newer, ultra-modern, gorgeous buildings. And I'd say that the most special one is the Schmidt Family Complex. It has athletic facilities that are probably better than anything else here in Florida. But it's not just athletics, it is, academics. A couple of new residence halls on both the Boca campus and the Jupiter campus. And the university has renovated its student center. It's the U. And one of the things that is most popular there is their esports arena. Esports are very, very big at FAU. So the building is absolutely fantastic. I was in it several months ago. I'm just amazed. And there are some really good scholarships also available at FAU. Wilkes Honors College is much, much smaller, well under 1,000 undergraduate students, very small personalized classes. It feels more like a small liberal arts school than a large state university, very, very personalized. It is a wonderful place to go if you're interested in the health sciences, because you're going to be able to get research internships at Scripps, which is now called UF Scripps Institute, as well as Max Planck Research Institute, which are both very physically, they're right there by FAU up in the Jupiter area. Harder to get into the Wilkes Honors College than it is to get into FAU itself. Higher, scores and GPA. This was their mid 50% admitted this year. There is a website that is called thecollegetour.com, and some of our state universities have actually been featured on it. And a great way to visit any school, if you can't get there in person, is doing it online. But this particular show does a great job, and you're going to see there's one other of our state universities that was featured on thecollegevisit.com. Anyway, we'll move to one more school, and then I will see if there are questions. We're going to move over now to the west coast of Florida, to Fort Myers, to Florida Gulf Coast. So it's a campus that has expanded over time. And like FAU, it's also known for its basketball. This is 10 years ago when it went on basically to defeat number 2 Georgetown. And that was the Sweet 16. They didn't quite make it to the Final Four, but it has very much put Florida Gulf Coast on a national map. And that school is one of our newer ones. It only recently turned 25 years old. It started with 2,500 students, but it's up to 16,000. Plus, they have an honors college. And they also are well known for social mobility and nursing. And they used to be ranked regionally by U.S. News, but they now moved them over to the national ranking. And it has quite a few majors and minors. And some of the things that I think are completely unique about Florida Gulf Coast are things like PGA golf management. There's only 18 colleges in the whole country that offer that. Video game design. Something relatively new, I believe, is their water school. They're studying water-based issues, but it goes, incorporated into things like engineering and business and psychology. And computer science and construction management are newer for Florida Gulf Coast. And one of the really cool things about them is that they have the second highest employment rate for graduates among the Florida institutions. These, if you meet these requirements, doesn't mean you will automatically get a scholarship. It means you will be considered for a scholarship. And they're both for Florida residents and non-residents. So it's based on your weighted GPA and SAT or ACT scores to get a really nice scholarship from Florida Gulf Coast. So what's brand new is a brand new home. It's only 2 years old now. It's Lucas Hall, which is if you're interested in the entrepreneurial aspects of business, that you'll be taking your courses at Lucas Hall. And this is the water school. Not sure why they call it academic building number 9, but I guess it doesn't have a formal name, but it is the water school. And you can see how gorgeous, ultra modern it actually is. And it's sort of on the east end of campus, so it's not the same part of campus as many of the other things, but they have phenomenal research labs in there that are really focused on solving water quality issues in the region. So they have a relatively new fitness and wellness center where anyone would just be thrilled to be working out, because it sort of gives you a very uplifting type of a feeling to be working out in a building that looks like this. But I think what's really special about Florida Gulf Coast is the residential life. I certainly wish that we had residence halls that looked and felt like this when I went to college back in the ice ages, and specifically this North Lake Village, because it is really like living, in a resort, because, you've got a boardwalk and you've got a Starbucks, and you've got a pool, and you can play sand volleyball and fire pit. I mean, it's just, you would never know you were really on a college campus because it just doesn't look like that. So Florida Gulf Coast does play D1 sports. In fact, I believe only have one state university that doesn't. See if you can guess. I'll get to it eventually. Princeton Review ranked it as the #1 school in Florida or state university in Florida for entrepreneurship programs. So if you're interested in starting your own business, Florida Gulf Coast might be a really cool place to be. Let me find out if there are any questions. I'm actually being joined by my son, Jason, who oversees all of our schools and learning centers. And
only one question so far.
Okay.
Are DE courses seen as just as rigorous as ACE, IB, and AP?
That's a great question, whether the DE courses are seen as being just as rigorous. I'm going to say the answer is primarily yes, in the sense that the weighting that's given to a dual enrollment core course, not necessarily a dual enrollment non-core, and it differs for the different state universities, which ones they count, but you get the same weight in the sense that you'll get a full point for every semester of dual enrollment, just as you will for an AP or an ACE or an IB. But I think when they get to really examining very, very closely the academic record, there are certain courses that I think are more competitive state universities would rather see. So for example, let's say you have the choice of taking AP physics or dual enrollment physics. It depends on the reason why you're going to take dual enrollment. If, for example, the AP physics does not fit into your curriculum because it is only offered at the same time as, let's say, AP Spanish, so that you have to take it as dual enrollment, it will be looked at exactly the same way. However, if you say that, oh my God, we have the AP physics teacher from hell, there's no way I want to take the AP course, but I'm going to take the dual enrollment course because it's easier. I would say it may not be looked at exactly the same way. It depends if the college knows why you're taking it. For instance, UF probably would not know because they don't accept recommendations. Neither does FSU. So your counselor couldn't say, oh, well, she took it because she couldn't fit it into her regular schedule, or because she had a course conflict, or because she was sort of looking for something that might be less rigorous. So I would say for the most part, the dual enrollment courses are looked at and weighted exactly the same as AP, IB, and ACE. But if you're looking at, let's say, other universities besides our state universities in Florida, then you may find specifically that they don't value your dual enrollment exactly the same way as AP, ACE, and IB. It varies from school to school. And the reason it may not, and I'm not saying it won't, but that it may not get the same recognition is because, let me start with AP and IB. Those are like universal. It doesn't matter where in the world you are if you take an AP or an IB course. Colleges know what it is because the curriculum is either set by the International Baccalaureate Program or it's set by College Board. And so it's the same no matter where in the world you're taking it. But if you wind up taking DE 1101 and 1102, English, 1101 and 1102, those are like your freshman composition courses in college, and you're doing that instead of, say, AP Lit. That's a huge difference when you're looking at especially at out-of-state universities, because they have no idea what that course really means. And I would say that if you're taking it because you had a conflict and you couldn't take AP Lit, your counselor should be writing that in the recommendation so a college knows you're not just doing it to get out of taking AP Lit. The other thing is taking a dual enrollment course in, let's say, something like nutrition, which is not considered a core, probably will not do you any any real good, other than perhaps you want to major in nutrition or something related in college, because it's not a core course. And you'll be looked at as someone who might be playing the rank game, knowing that that's going to boost your rank because it's going to boost the GPA that your high school calculates for you. So I hope I've answered that question sufficiently. So let's talk about FIU primarily down in Miami. They also have a campus, for example, in China, but they do have two major campuses in the Miami area. And their admission works marginally different in the sense that you're sorted into a particular pathway based on your academic record, your test scores. And there's a specific pathway tool, I've given you the link here, that you can go in there and you can actually enter your GPA and answer some other questions. And you're going to find out where you're likely to be admitted. And they don't call their summer admission program summer. Most of our state universities, you can apply for summer or fall. And when you apply for summer, it's called summer B, because there's actually a summer A, but you're still in high school when summer A starts. Summer B is when our state universities start a summer program for kids who are just graduating from high school, but starting before the fall term. However, FIU does not call it summer. They call it early fall, but you can start there in any of 3 terms. And if you're in the top 10% of your graduating class, it's automatic admission to FIU. Yes, you still have to go through the application process, but it is automatic admission. So they have also some pathways to admission. They're called STEP, the Supported Transition to Excellence program. So if you're interested in something like engineering or other STEM areas or business, but you're not quite calculus ready, you might be accepted to a pathway program. Basically, you're going to find again that many of our state universities have sort of other supportive programs for kids who are almost qualified, and in most cases you don't apply to them. There's one that you do, and I'll get to that, but you are accepted to them because you almost meet the requirements for admission. So FIU is actually considered what's called a minority-majority university, where the majority of students are actually underrepresented minorities. And in the case of FIU, half of the admitted students are first gen. Parents have not gone to college. Half of them, and it's not necessarily the same half, have gotten what's called a Pell Grant. A Pell Grant usually goes to a student who comes from an under-resourced family. Their income may be under $20,000 per year. So I would say that this is a university that really does a great job supporting kids whose parents have not gone to college, whose parents don't make a lot of money. And a little bit more than 3/4 of the students at FIU are Hispanic. And like most of our state universities, they have fewer than 10% out-of-staters. In fact, the entire state university system in Florida allows, on average, 10% of all the students at all 12 universities combined can be from out of state. So some have a little bit more than 10%, some have a little bit less than 10%. But it is important to know that we don't have a huge out of state enrollment. And for some of our state universities, it can be harder to get in. One of our state universities did give us numbers for in-state versus out-of-state admission rates, and you'll see that in a minute. So there are a number of really hot new majors at FIU that have only been around for a couple of years, things like digital journalism and multimedia production, and lots of research going on, and all kinds of very cool labs at at FIU as well. Cybersecurity is super hot. In fact, that's a hot major at many, many schools. These are among their very, very top majors, or at least their most interesting majors. And their international business is always ranked like way at the top. And I don't mean just in Florida, but comparing the international business program at FIU to other international business programs around the country, it usually comes out in just, the top handful. And I'd say so many students who I've worked with personally, love something like, CSI on TV. And so therefore a major like crime scene has become, super hot. And they also have a unique major called physics entrepreneurship. I haven't seen that, pretty much anywhere else. And their architecture cruise ship design is also very, very cool. So if you want to, if you want to create the next celebrity cruise ship, this might be the place to go. So they do a lot of great underwater stuff where you can actually, study below the surface of the earth, essentially. In Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, you are, underwater. They're also very generous when it comes to, to scholarship programs, and especially for DACA kids. Basically, for undocumented students, they are amazingly, welcome to it. And by the way, if you're a National Merit Finalist, you're going to get a full ride. You're going to be in the Honors College. You're going to be guaranteed research. It's an amazing opportunity. Also, has some very, very high rankings. I mean, look at that, number 4 in social mobility. It doesn't get much better than that. Really great computer science and just tremendous emphasis on research. If you're interested in research in almost any area, and this doesn't mean just STEM, FIU is definitely a place to go. And also new on campus, phenomenal housing in Tamiami Hall. And you may have heard of there's, a high school called Mast High School. It's Miami, and it's just very, very into marine science and technology. And so that's on the FIU campus. And look at what their new, College of Engineering and Computer Science looks like. It's, a 90,000 square foot, just outrageous looking building. So FIU was the other school that was featured on, the college tour. Okay, so let's move to one more, and then I will see if there are questions. So Florida Poly, I actually recently had an opportunity to spend a day on campus, and I was just blown away, not just by the facilities, but by the students I met and how articulate they were. And I mean, some of them were talking a language that I didn't understand. And my background is STEM also, by the way. I have degrees in math and computer science. And these kids were studying things that were so unique, so esoteric. And this is just an amazing place. So the IST building, which is the picture I just showed you, was their very, first building on campus. And by the way, they are the only polytechnic university within the SUS system. But this building is, you walk into it, you think that, you're in Star Trek or something like that, because it is just so ultra modern in there. And their virtual library is pretty amazing. I'll show you a picture of it in a minute. There are no books in their virtual library. So, it's students. I mean, these are, I'm going to say, well, mathletes. I used to think of it as like a math nerd, but mathletes. I mean, these are kids where math is really like, like athletics. I mean, it's something that they love to do, that exercises the brain, exercises the body when you're really, into it. Huge increase in applications, and they're going to grow to about 2,000 students. So if you walk inside the IST building, this is the kind of thing you're going to see. Look at the size of that classroom. Okay, you're paying for a public education, but you're getting the equivalent of being at a small private university that is completely focused on, things that are STEM, related. So the school is about 10 years old now. This is what their library looks like. It's really a killer space. It was actually featured in Jeopardy, where, the answer was, a university library that has no books. Again, social mobility is, and also best value, that were, two things that the school is really well noted for. And it should not come as a surprise that their graduates earn the highest salaries among all the graduates from public universities in Florida. And it's not a bad starting salary, almost $60,000 within 1 year, of graduation. You can imagine that, their majors are going to be, really some esoteric things within computer science, typical, I'd say, engineering. But one of the unique things is that their curriculum has not just been designed by academics. It's been designed by people in industry, by engineers, by computer scientists. So it's really very, very practical, hands-on learning. They do have 2 new majors, civil and industrial engineering. Goodness, what else? You get immersed in STEM core subjects, on day 1. You have to do a senior capstone project, which will catapult you into the working world. You're going to be doing an internship, as well. Basically, very cutting edge, very hands-on, very accelerated pace, if you are at Florida Poly. And they have partnerships with so many industry leaders. I mean, look at all these well-known names that Florida Poly has partnerships with. That means opportunities, for internships, for jobs, and certainly the input from these companies in terms of the design of the curriculum at Florida Poly. So they do have 12 sports teams. I've listed a few of them, but their largest team is not what I would call a sports team. It's the robotics team. And they do compete very favorably, in combat robotics. There are 30 clubs on campus, but probably one of the most fun ones, and this, again, you have to be really, into Star Wars, because it's the Force, and you're going to be inspired by the Jedi way. And so if you are a member of the Sports, Institute, there are ways that you get really engaged with students in a way that combines, science fiction. I mean, you could do things like lightsaber training. It's just a very cool club that I don't know that any other university has anything like this. So the newest building on campus is the Academic Research Center. It is every bit as impressive as the first building that I showed you. It's huge, and it has helped them really expand in terms of the number of majors and the different specialties that are offered on the Florida Poly campus. Like most of our other state universities, they have a number of really nice scholarships. And with that, we're ready to move on to FSU, but let me just see if there are any questions that I can answer.
What is the best kind of volunteer work a high school freshman can be doing to increase chance of acceptance to UF? And what are the best kind of part-time jobs?
Okay, so the question is, first of all, what is the best kind of community service, community outreach that one can do to improve chances for admission? The question was to UF, but I'm going to say to any competitive university. So here's what colleges don't want to see in terms of community service. They are not looking for the kids who are trying to get, let's say, their 50 or 100 hours that their high school requires for graduation. So they don't want to see that you've done 20 hours at calling bingo at an old age home, 15 hours at a soup kitchen, that you've done like school donations, clothing drives, toy drives, that you're involved in some walkathons. In other words, they don't want to see a little bit of this and a little bit of that. They want to see you get yourself committed. All you need is one thing that's community service, oriented, something that is very, very meaningful to you. So, and it doesn't matter what it is. Could it be a food kitchen? Of course. Could it be walkathons? Not just that you're walking, but that you're organizing them or that you're starting them. And of course, I think the very best thing that you can do is to start some kind of a new community service activity and grow it. So for example, let's just say that you're an athlete. Let's say that you play baseball. You might want to start a drive for used baseball clothing, cleats, for bats, for balls, and be able to donate it either to, a school that might not be able to afford, uniforms or equipment, or perhaps you're donating it, somebody is traveling or sending it, to some country, perhaps, let's say in the Caribbean, and giving it to, a school for, less privileged children. Or maybe you're actually starting some kind of a baseball training program for, underprivileged students, or better than baseball. Maybe it is golf, because one normally thinks of, okay, golf, that's usually a sport for a student who might come from a wealthier family. There's a wonderful organization called First Tee. What if you're a golfer and you got yourself really involved in First Tee and perhaps started a golf tournament that raised money for First Tee, or that raised, that had a drive for used golf equipment. So I would say long-term commitment, leadership, dedication to one community service project idea, starting your own type of project, that would be great. Okay. Then the next question was, what would be the best part-time job? There is no such thing as the best part-time job. You could be the bad girl at Publix, and honestly, that could be the best part-time job. Or perhaps you're assisting, in a law office, or you're doing some computer programming for, a company on a part-time basis. Okay. In all honesty, the idea that you're putting yourself out there in a professional workplace, that you're interacting with people who you might not normally interact with, you're learning much more about, let's say, business ethics, communication, customer service. And by the way, could wind up with a phenomenal essay. In fact, one of the best essays I'd ever read was a student of mine who operated a food cart in like a hot dog cart or pretzel cart, like in New York City, and the people he met on the street corner. And another one did come from a bad girl at Publix, and the way she was treated by a lot of shoppers, which wasn't a very positive experience, but how she, responded to it. Anything else?
You mentioned that FAU admissions are soaring. What do you think that will do to their summer admissions?
Okay. So for most of our state universities, it is a little bit easier to get in for the summer. If you look at the chart that you'll be able to download from this webinar, I have the summer and the fall admission rates for those schools that offer both. And you're actually going to see that in most cases, UF is the big exception. You could have slightly lower grades and test scores to get in for the summer, and that the admit rate was much higher. So when I say that I think that FAU's applications are going to soar much more this year, because of making the Final Four. It's going to soar for both summer and fall. It will be harder to get into FAU. That's just my prediction. Not always right, but I've seen that before with other athletics. It happened to University of Miami years ago when their athletics really, had gained a national reputation. It certainly happened to Florida Gulf Coast.
And did you say FAU had 36,000 applications and only accepted 4,400?
I'd have to go back to that screen right now. So let's see if we have time at the end, and then I'll go back to that screen. Okay, let me move forward to FSU. I have to admit that I'm a little bit prejudiced when it comes to FSU. You may hear me being even more positive about FSU because FSU has an admissions advisory board. I believe that there's about 7 of us on that board. 6 of them work in public high schools, and I'm the only independent educational consultant that was selected for that FSU board. And in fact, we'll be on campus again next month, where we actually are used as a sounding board and a consulting arm for admissions. Doesn't mean that we can get anyone in or have any pull, nothing like that, but we've become very attached to FSU. So earlier I showed you what the minimum requirements are to be eligible for admission to a state university in Florida. This is actually what the average student looked like who got into FSU. Whereas, let me just start with math. 5.5 years of math on average, even though 4 years are required. So what does that mean? Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, pre-calc, 1 year of calculus. That's only 5, which means that the average student, after taking all the way through calculus, either took the 2nd year of calculus or took AP statistics, for example. That's would give you an average of 5.5. So you can see that the students who are getting into FSU more than meet the minimum requirements. And by the way, if you have a D or an F anywhere on your transcript, unless there was something major going on, it can be the kiss of death in terms of admissions. So let me just show you how hyper competitive FSU was. This is the exact number of applications, admitted and enrolled students, for this year for freshmen. And this was the one school that actually did share the in-state admit rate. Roughly 1/3 of the kids who applied got in. The out-of-state admit rate, this is equivalent to some highly, highly selective private universities. And the overall admit rate was that basically just 1 in 4 students got in. So it is a smaller freshman class. The same thing happened last year as well. They've been downsizing a little bit. All of our counties in Florida were represented, all of our states. You can see quite a few countries. And since 2016, applications are, up 158%. So what does the average student look like? And they're far from average getting into FSU. 9 on average, either AP, a combination of AP, IB, ACE, and dual enrollment. Actually, let me switch to something else about ACE. ACE is incredibly well known in Florida, and it's harder than honors. And it's, for most kids will tell me that it's easier than AP and IB. So it might be just a great stepping stone when you're trying to get into a more and more rigorous curriculum. But I'm going to tell you that outside of Florida, ACE may not be quite as well known and may not give you the same boost as AP or IB will. And just by way of example, if you apply to any of the 9 state universities in California, again, UCLA, Berkeley, etc., any of those 9, they will give you a bump for what's called a California approved honors. And what that means is a regular honors course that's taken here in Florida doesn't give you a bump. What gives you a bump is AP and IB, not dual enrollment because it's not California approved, and not ACE. So there's no bump at all for ACE. And honestly, unless you have a whole bunch of AP and IB, getting into most of the 9 state universities in California is pretty hard for an out-of-stater. When I visited the University of Southern California most recently, and they talked about admission and what it takes to get into USC, one of my questions was when they talked about AP, IB, basically they never mentioned ACE. So my question to admissions was, how do you evaluate ACE courses? And the answer from admissions was, what's ACE? I said, thank you, you've answered my question. So USC doesn't give you any extra weight for ACE. So understand, if you're looking at the state university system in Florida or any of our private schools in Florida, ACE is widely regarded as pretty much equivalent in terms of the way they calculate a GPA, but it's not always widely recognized outside of Florida. Anyway, going back now to FSU. 3/4 of the kids earned nothing but A's and B's, which means if you have a few C's on your transcript, even one or two, it's going to make it harder to get in. Maybe it was freshman year, and ever since then you've been nothing but A's and B's, that would be fine. But let's say C's junior year, might make it super tough. Goodness, almost everyone was in the top 10% of their graduating class, 87% of the kids. More than half of them took calculus. And almost everyone does 4 years. I shouldn't say almost everyone. Almost half of the kids do 4 years of one language, all the way up to AP. So you can see that these are kids who have a really strong academic record who are getting into FSU. Honestly, what most competitive colleges look at first is the rigor of your academic curriculum. But by the way, if you go to a school that doesn't offer all of these, let's say AP or IB, or ACE, whatever courses, then you can't be held to that same standard. And there definitely are schools here in Florida. Oxbridge Academy is one. They don't offer AP courses. So therefore, their kids are not going to, meet that. It's not a requirement, but they're not going to be penalized because their school doesn't offer it. You can only do what your school offers. And yes, there are kids who go above and beyond, who don't just take the courses offered by their school, but will find, an online program to be able to take extra courses. So in fact, some kids come to our school, SCORE Academy, just on a part-time basis or even online to take an extra course for credit. Often it's an AP course, something that they couldn't fit into their schedule at school. So I mentioned earlier that October 15th is the early action date only for Florida residents. And in all honesty, if you live here in Florida and you're applying to FSU, if you don't apply by October 15th, you're making it much, much, much harder to get in. And you'll get your decision, in time to celebrate Christmas, or Hanukkah. And if you get deferred from early action, they are expecting you to send in your first semester of senior grades. They do have a final deadline date of March 1st, but in all honesty, you just don't want to do that. And if you're out of state, by the way, your deadline date is December 1st. You really do want to meet that. You don't want to wait for the final date, and you'll get your decision a day after Valentine's Day. Hopefully it's a really positive one. You need to submit at least one score at the time you are applying, but you can add extra scores, and which will be considered. The latest test score you can add for early action is the November score, even though it's after the early action deadline. As long as you have another score in place, you can add your November score for early action, and that one will be used. And if you're applying for regular, you can actually do the December score. And again, it's after the December deadline, but you must already have another score as a placeholder, and then that score will be replaced by the higher score. The other thing that distinguishes FSU from most of our other state universities is that you must apply for the term you want. It is harder to get in for fall, but if you really want to start in fall, apply for fall. Otherwise, applying for summer makes it slightly easier to get into. But most of our other state universities will consider you for a term other than the one you applied for. So if I were to apply to UCF, let's say for fall, and they looked at my application and said, she's not quite strong enough for fall, we're going to admit her for summer. FSU stopped doing that a year ago. You must apply for the term that you want to attend. And again, it is harder to get in for fall. And by the way, I think starting in the summer is a phenomenal opportunity. Yes, it's your last summer before college, and many of your friends may be home, but you're not on campus all summer. And I think that it's much more fun to be on a college campus than to be home with mom and dad. Just my 2 cents worth. And starting in the summer gives you the opportunity to take 2 courses, only 2 courses, easier to get A's, find out more about like Greek life, clubs, best restaurants in the area, hangout places, get the skinny on different professors. When you come back in the fall, you're just going to feel like less new. I think starting in the summer is a phenomenal opportunity. These are the most popular majors for the students who were, admitted to start this year in order. And undecided, by the way, is the most popular major in general at colleges. And I'm often asked if it's okay to apply to college as undecided. It's not my favorite, but if you really can't decide about which major you want, yes, you can apply undecided, but applying to college with a particular major can make you look a lot more focused, but you have to be able to support it. And it's not unusual for me to get a question from someone who said, well, what if I apply for philosophy or linguistics? Because I know that those are not super popular majors, and that's true, they're not. But for instance, if I'm applying for linguistics, if I haven't studied, let's say, Greek or Latin, or gone through both years of AP, English, or if I'm not an avid reader, then they know that it's, I'm just, trying to manipulate the system to get in. You have to be able to justify your major. So if I'm applying, let's say, as an engineering major, I've had at least pre-calc, preferably calculus, and I've probably had physics, preferably AP physics, if it's a highly competitive school. So you need to be able to justify. You'll look stronger if you can justify your major. But anyway, the 4th most popular major at FSU is called exploratory, which is basically undecided. And a number of their majors are very, very highly ranked. That especially their visual and performing arts are amazingly, highly ranked, stronger than any other state university here in Florida. And their hospitality and sports management are amazingly just fabulous majors. They have some new majors that are sort of combination majors where you can get, for instance, your bachelor's in computer science and a master's in interdisciplinary data science. So there's 2 that have the first one, the bachelor's in stats with a master's in interdisciplinary data science. These are sort of brand new programs. Entrepreneurship is huge at FSU, and it's a combined program that's, again, a bachelor's, and a master's. So these are just the newest things that they have at FSU. Their honors program is incredibly, well regarded, and the GPA, it's rare to see weighted GPAs the way they calculate it this high, 4.4 to 4.7, with pretty high test scores, as well. So it goes beyond numbers because they really need to see, great extracurricular commitment, especially with things like, leadership and initiative and impact. And you don't have to have work experience, but that can add to it. And you have to be someone who loves to learn. And in addition to the personal statement that's required for the admission application, there is a separate honors essay. It will be a brand new essay this year. It will be different from what it was last year. So what's new on campus is the student center, which is, pretty new. It only opened a year ago. I haven't seen it yet since I haven't been on campus in 2 or 3 years because of COVID. But it sounds like it's an amazing place with its own bowling alley and a club for music and dancing and 4 different restaurants. pretty cool place on campus. There is a new living and learning community for students who are first generation. And in fact, almost a third of all FSU students are first gen. And so the FSU does a tremendous job making them feel, super comfortable and successful on campus. And construction has actually started on a brand new College of Business, and it's called Legacy Hall. It's going to be opening in 2 years. It will cost more than $130 million. I'll bet that'll be up a lot more than that. And the smallest thing in there will be, a 40-seat classroom. So yes, they will have some small classes in there, but the largest will be, a 300-seat auditorium. And it's going to have 2 spaces that are called commons, where students can hang out, where they can just, study, but on the, first level and the second level, just, great large study areas. And what I think is really special, 2 things, the financial laboratory, where they're going to have an actual trading room, just like, you're working, in the stock market, and they'll have the Bloomberg terminals where students will get real world experience. And the other thing is the real estate war room. I'm not sure exactly what will be in there, but it sounded pretty exciting to me. So what you may not know is that FSU has a campus in Panama City. So let's say you're dying to go to FSU, but you really don't relish being in such a huge place. You could actually apply to directly, not on the Common App. It's a completely separate application. And you could be at FSU in Panama City on the water with fewer than 1,000 students. A little easier to get into than regular FSU. They have a number of things that are called pathway programs that you can be accepted to if you're not accepted for Tallahassee. They're basically programs that allow you to start elsewhere, could be internationally actually, and after you complete the pathway, you actually transition right into the Tallahassee campus. So this is what it took to get into a pathway program where you might be spending 1 semester or 1 full year abroad. Definitely, less competitive than getting into FSU, and basically do your study abroad first and then come to the main campus. And you'll come with your whole cohort, that wherever you're studying, you'll be coming with other students who are studying, elsewhere. And they have a separate, it's very confusing because they have so many different programs, but a separate, what's called the first year abroad program that you apply to. Backing up, these pathway programs you get selected for, but the first year abroad program, and you can study in any of those 4 places, you actually apply. And this is the one program for, say, disadvantaged students of all of our state universities. I believe it's the only one that you can actually apply to. That the others you're self-selected, but here you actually apply to be part of the CARE Summer Bridge. And so you can see that the GPA is lower, the scores are lower. You get phenomenal mentoring. And there were, what does it look like, 12, a little bit more than a third of the students who applied for it were accepted, and quite a few of those actually wound up enrolling. But they're basically kids who are first generation or financially disadvantaged, and they have a strong desire and lots of potential to succeed. U.S. News loves FSU. They were ranked in, lots of different things, including things like social mobility and best value. Their nursing program is pretty terrific as well. And these are just some of my own pictures. Let me go through that again because I love looking at these pictures of FSU. But College Magazine said that FSU was one of the most beautiful college campuses anywhere in America. And they're known for their circus. These are student performers. I'm not sure how many other colleges have their own circus, but I've been to performances now at the circus, and they're pretty amazing. So, questions?
Lots of questions.
Lots of questions. Let's do a few.
Are you talking about the Verto program for study abroad in your first year?
No, this is not the Verto program that I'm talking about. Verto is a completely separate program, but it has nothing to do with the state universities in Florida.
If you apply to a summer program or get in for summer, can you do it virtually, or do you have to go on campus?
I believe now that COVID is over, that if you get in for summer, I believe, but don't quote me on this, but I believe you must do it in person. But I don't know that for sure. That's a great question. If you email me, whoever you are, that same question, I will, and it's for a particular college, let me know. I will get you the answer.
Will universities, especially those not in Florida, know how competitive schools are? So will they know that Suncoast may be more competitive than another public school in Florida?
Okay, so the question is, what if you're applying outside of the state of Florida? You know, let's just say that I'm applying to, I don't know, Boston University or Boston College or Northwestern or Duke or Washington University in St. Louis. So how will they know how competitive your high school is if you go to Suncoast or Dreyfus or St. Andrews or Ransom Everglades? How will they know? So most colleges read applications by region. So let's just say I'm applying to WashU St. Louis, pretty far away from here in Florida. There will be a rep in admissions who reads Florida applications. And in fact, if they get a lot of Florida applications, and I believe they do at WashU, there may be one rep for Southern Florida, and there may be one rep for Central Florida, and there may be another rep for Northern Florida and Alabama, for example. That rep travels to the schools every year. So starting right around now is when college admission reps are traveling around the country, now that COVID is over, supposedly, I hope, and visiting all the different schools. So that rep is going to know the difference between American Heritage, North Broward, Spanish River, Boca High, Oxbridge Academy. Okay. So they're going to know how competitive your school actually is, and that will be taken into consideration when you are evaluated for admission, because you're always evaluated in the context of your school. Okay, I'm going to move on. I'm going to talk about New College. I'm not sure why we're still calling it New College, because it's not so new. It's, more than 50 years old. So it is our public liberal arts college, and it has fewer than 1,000 students. It is basically a complete honors college where you can create your own major. You could even get a certificate in something business related, which is incredibly unusual for a liberal arts college. There are many career building courses. Okay, you don't get any grades. No grades, no A's, B's, whatever. You're just going to get a narrative evaluation. And yes, you can apply to med school or law school or an MBA program with that. There's no core. You can take whatever courses you really want. Things will be changing there. We're not sure exactly how things will be changing, but our state government is sort of remaking a new college. Anyway, very small hands-on classes. I mean, they're going to be smaller than your high school classes. Lots of opportunity for independent study. In fact, every January is an independent study period. You're going to do a senior capstone project. This is the top producer of PhDs in Florida. In terms of, per capita, based on the number of undergraduate students, there are more students who get PhDs per capita than there are at any other state university here in Florida. And 83%, which is huge, of the graduates are employed or in graduate school with, in less than a semester after graduating. So again, high ranks in U.S. News. and it's had some, some funny ranks in the past. Like Princeton Review said, hey, these kids are the #1 dodgeball targets. And Huffington Post said, this is the nerdiest college. But students like this like to be like nerdy. That's like being the mathlete. It is a very, very cool place for a student who's looking for a very hands-on, creative application and very, very intellectually stimulating environment. So I lied. I said there was only one school in our system that was not NCAA Division I. There's two. So they play. They don't even play in the NCAA. They play in the NAIA. And there is a wonderful book called Colleges That Change Lives. Was written originally by Lauren Pope. If you are, let's say, maybe a B+ student or even a B student, and you're looking to go to some college that is really likely to change your life and lead you to a phenomenal career and a world of success. This is a book, it doesn't have places in it like Duke or Northwestern. It is Colleges That Really Change Lives. They're lesser known colleges. Okay, so New College is in there. Do you have to be a straight A student to get into a New College? The answer is no, you don't. But you have to be looking for an intellectually stimulating environment and be a good match for that. So going from perhaps one of our smallest universities to our absolutely largest universities, University of Central Florida. And I'd like to start with what makes it really special, which is the Rosen College of Hospitality Management. It has been ranked as the #1 hospitality management program in the nation, and it's been ranked as high as #2 in the entire world. And you may ask, why? Why is UCF so high in hospitality? Well, think about where it is. It's Orlando. There is no city in America that has more hotel rooms than Orlando. I mean, think of what's there, Disney and Universal. It's actually the most visited destination in the US. So kids get lots of internships, not just at, places like Disney, but, all the hotels around there. So the hospitality management program is actually on a physically separate campus. It's not on the main campus. And what was actually just added in terms of majors, brand new, is theme park and attraction management has just been added. You don't have, if you wanted to minor, let's say, in hospitality or event management, you can, even if you're not a Rosen student. So I could be a computer science student, but I love planning parties. So I might be a minor in event management, but my major might be computer science on the main campus. So it's about a half an hour away from the main campus, but there is a shuttle that goes back and forth, 10 times a day. So what is it? Almost every hour. And you can live on the Rosen campus. You can live on the main campus. Of course, if you're a Rosen student, I don't know why you might want to live on the main campus. You probably find it much easier, more convenient if you're living on the Rosen campus. But hospitality management is one of the, certainly one of the driving forces at UCF. Sadly, UCF discontinued 2 programs that I loved. The Top 10 Nights, which was pretty much an automatic admission program, gone. And the Burnett Medical Scholars, which was a double degree bachelor's med school, all in one, just like I told you about the FAU program. UCF has just discontinued it. What it will be doing is having a partnership with its own College of Medicine for pre-health events, and it will be for everyone who is in the honors program, because the Burnett Medical Scholars Program is part of the honors program. So these events will now be for anyone in the honors programs. Okay. So let's see. It has a wonderful 2-year leadership development program for freshmen. You can apply, through their website. It's part of the NASA program that's for returning to the moon. I don't know if there's any other colleges, involved in that. And half of the students who graduate without any debt. So this year they enrolled over 3,000 kids for the summer, over 5,000 kids for the fall. Definitely slightly less competitive to get in for the summer than for the fall. And 81 of the students who enrolled were National Merit Scholars. It was one of the few schools in Florida that was well ranked within being the most innovative. I'm not sure what that's actually based on, what makes it the most innovative, but it has that. And of course, it has the social mobility and the nursing. So UCF doesn't just stand for University of Central Florida. It stands for Under Construction Forever. So one of the newest things is their entire downtown campus that opened up in Orlando, and it was 4 years ago. And the majors are all related to industry that is within pretty much walking distance of the campus. And the campus does have a 15-story residence hall. And here you can see pictures of some of the recently completed construction on campus. And what is brand new is the nursing building, which is on their Lake Nona campus. That's their healthcare or medical campus. That is where the med school is. And UCF does produce the most licensed registered nurses of all of our state universities in Florida. But of course, if you think about it, it makes sense because it is our largest, state university. So it's about 25 miles south of Orlando. Oh, sorry, forgot that there were 3 schools that were on the college tour. So it is part of Amazon Prime. Okay, let's move to our other flagship school. And I'd say UF and FSU are both considered flagships, but I have to say UCF is up there with them as well. So artificial intelligence, and this was before Chat GPT. AI is, across the curriculum. It's infused into everything now. In fact, Allie, who you may have seen on their website, is the world's first AI alligator. And no matter what your major is, it doesn't have to be computer science. If you want to earn a certificate in AI, you can. So think about it this way. Computer science is the hardest major to get into at virtually every college in America. Here, I can earn a certificate in AI, which is like sort of the newest, latest, hottest, computer science major. No matter what my major is, I'm earning a certificate. I can earn a certificate in it. So this is a brand new building on campus. Well, it's almost ready to open. It will be opening, they claim, later this semester. It's data science and information technology, and it's going to be home for computer science, the Florida Institute for Cybersecurity, everything computer science oriented. And if you're visiting college campuses, you're going to be hearing more and more about maker spaces, where there are 3D printers and virtual reality, and kids are really making things regardless of their major. And the maker spaces are in this brand new Malachowski Hall. So this is their Hyper Gator AI. It's the most powerful supercomputer in the whole world, and it is on the UF campus. So UF is the one exception. There is no advantage for the summer. The admission stats are the same, whether you apply for summer or fall. And if I apply for fall and they would rather have me in summer, they're going to admit me for summer. I think the reverse is not always the case. When you apply to UF claims that they do not look at your major, so that therefore it's no harder to get into engineering, although you really do need to have the good STEM background, or computer science. super important that when you apply to UF, you actually apply for housing before you find out if you're in. If you wait until you're in to apply for housing, and you don't find out until February, by the way, you risk not getting housing. Housing is not guaranteed. So you do have to file a housing application, I'd say, within a couple of weeks of your main UF application. You do have to send a $25 deposit. It is non-refundable, even if you don't get in, or if you get in and decide not to live in a residence hall. So, by the way, housing is tight at most of our state universities. I don't know that the others allow you to apply for housing before you are admitted. But I would say for any of our state universities, if you think you're going to go, find out about the housing application and please apply for it like at your first opportunity. But with UF, honestly, within 2 weeks of applying to UF, please apply for housing. I mentioned before that they say they don't look at major when you're applying to UF. However, there is a special program called PACE where they will look at major because PACE has a limited number of majors. I'll get into that. So when you apply to UF, you can apply to the honors program. It is part of the regular application. But the profile you can see for the students who got into the honors program, you can see how high the SAT and ACT and recalculated GPA were. That recalculated GPA of a 4.61 is pretty much a straight A with like every AP, ACE, IB, or dual enrollment course you could possibly take. And if this is relatively new, that if you were at Santa Fe College, which is one of our state colleges, as part of your transfer process into UF, if you're in the honors program at Santa Fe College, you can be invited to join the UF honors program. And there is, by the way, a brand new state-of-the-art honors village. That's a picture of it that has opened on the UF campus. It's not complete. 2 of the dorms have been completed, residence halls, because a dorm is where you dorm or where you sleep, and you do more than just sleep at the residence hall. So 2 of the 4 residence halls are already open. The other 2 are not yet complete. So UF has a few different ways to get in, besides getting into the main UF, and I'd like to just go over them quickly with you. So IA Innovation Academy is a special program at UF where you're not there from, let's say, August through May. You're there from January through August. In the fall, which is football season, you're actually not there. You could be doing a study abroad. You can be doing an internship. Well, you could be there and you could be doing, research, but you're not taking regular courses. You might be taking special connection courses, but there's just a limited number of majors. And this is the list of majors. And what they all have in common, though, is that for all of them, you take your minor is innovation, which makes sense. It's called Innovation Academy. And your classes, honestly, are much, much smaller. So you're still a part of main UF. You're on the main, campus, but you're not there during the traditional 2 semesters. And there is a brand new AI track. These are the different tracks, or not tracks, but these are the different things that there are certain things in common in terms of the innovation, but there's also a brand new track for AI, for artificial intelligence. So this can give you an idea of what it took to get in. These are the kids who will be starting this coming spring. The admit rate is from 2023. They never got back to us on the admit rate for 2024, the percent admitted, but these numbers are definitely lower than the UF regular numbers. And a very small cohort, 275 kids who will be entering this spring. PACE. Okay, so this is a program that you actually start online, and you don't come on to full, in-person main campus until you've have completed either 2 semesters, well, a combination of 2 semesters and 15 credits online. And you have to complete a total of 60, but these are also kids who will have gotten credit for AP, IB, ACE, and dual enrollment. And you don't apply to PACE, you can be selected. And I have to say that of the students who I've worked with over the years who've gotten into PACE, the vast majority of them did not go because they did not want to start online, other than the kids who got in during COVID, because then pretty much it was an online education no matter what. And so it is, easier to be accepted to PACE, but you can't apply for it. And then there are some sort of pathway programs where you begin, at, let's say, Santa Fe College, or the State College of Florida. And these are in things like engineering and design and construction. And there are certain programs that are committed to like first generation and low income families. And I have to say that, I think you've now seen this so far across the whole spectrum where, all of our state universities are incredibly welcoming to under-resourced students who are coming from under-resourced families or who might attend, an under-resourced school. Most of the kids who graduate from UF do, as long as they started there, actually graduate with no debt. And I think one of the coolest things is that almost 200 Gators have competed already, in the Olympics and have won quite a few medals. It is the oldest of Florida state universities, is University of Florida. Did you know that Gatorade was invented at the University of Florida? Think about it. It makes sense. I never really thought about it until about a year or two ago that Gatorade for the Gators was invented at UF. And so what's really, really special at UF? I mean, look at that football stadium. I mean, who wouldn't want to be part of that? Let me think, I want to say it might have been 2 years ago for the first time, University of Florida. And by the way, as much as you may hear people poo-poo U.S. News and World Report, I have to say that for most colleges, and especially the ones in state universities in Florida, the ranking actually means quite a bit. UF had a long-standing goal of becoming in the top 5 of state universities, in the country. And it's actually tied for number 5. There are 6 state universities that are in the top 5. So it's tied with UNC Chapel Hill. So there's tremendous competition to get into the University of Florida from out-of-state students. And it is the very first state university in Florida, actually to be in the top 5 of state university rankings. The new ones, by the way, all the rankings that I have, are based on U.S. News and World Report from last year. And so the first time it came out was in September 2021, but it was ranked again in September 2022. So 2 years. The new rankings will probably be out, I think, in about a week. There was a very recent ranking, a completely different kind of ranking from the Wall Street Journal. This came out this month. And the University of Florida was ranked as the #1 public university anywhere in the country for their rankings. It was the 15th ranked university amongst public and private, but it was really based much more on completely different factors than the factors that are used for the U.S. News rankings. And it really had to do with student outcomes, graduating and getting a job and really doing well, but it also had to do with what the environment is like for learning and the diversity on campus. So this is quite a new accolade. I think this might be the first year for these U.S. News rankings. I just want you to see how many different areas University of Florida, is ranked in. Besides things like best value and social mobility, it's ranked in quite a few fields within business, within engineering, and computer science, and nursing are also incredibly well ranked. Excuse me while I take a sip of water. So, University of North Florida. That actually looks like a lazy, I forgot what you call it, but those lazy pools. They are known for 6 particular majors, which are listed on the left. But some of the most popular majors are majors that I guess kids live all over: communication, psych, and criminal justice. But what's really unique is their deaf education degree and their degree in American Sign Language. It is very close to the beach. It's very close to the airport. It's only a couple of hours from FSU. And it was started originally as a junior college for only 2,000 students, and now it's a nationally recognized university of well over 20,000 schools. Lots of first-gen kids, about a third, of their students, and that abbreviation FTIC may have appeared on a few slides before. I apologize for not explaining it. It's a common acronym within the state universities. FTIC refers to first time in college. So it could be a freshman. The majority of them are freshmen, but it could also be a transfer student. And it is a really, which is unusual, I guess, for most people think for Florida, but it is considered to be a fabulous place for a student who's a member of the LGBTQ plus, community. And it also has a very active sorority and fraternity life on campus. Their dorms were rated as being insanely luxurious. One of the things I think is most cool is that Mayo Clinic, not the main branch of Mayo Clinic in the main campus of Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, but their next campus down is in Jacksonville. And students can get internships working at the Mayo Clinic. They can also get involved in doctoral programs, apply to a doctoral program at Mayo Clinic. Their nursing program is incredibly well known. It's very, very small. You can just see, it's under, at most 30 kids a year. And their business school is also a very, very top business school, well regarded in social mobility as well. So University of South Florida actually has 3 different campuses, all of which have an honors college. And there are some pretty unique majors at each of them. St. Petersburg is, if you're looking for want to be part of USF, but may not quite have the grades to get in, but also don't want anything as big as 30,000 students, but value the idea of being downtown and on the water, which is unusual. So you're downtown and you're on the water and you're 5,000 students, but you're still part of USF. In other words, you can still participate in, going to football games. And Sarasota Manatee is the smallest of their 3 campuses, and they've only been around with freshmen for about 10 years. But they have a direct admit program with Stetson Law School, which is really pretty cool. The hardest to get into is their main campus, which is in Tampa. So they also have a 7-year BSMD program. It doesn't work at all like the one for the 2, I should say, for FAU, because it's not really a guaranteed admission program. It's something that you actually don't apply for and make known until after you're already enrolled there. But it is a 7-year program where your first 3 years are undergraduate, and your 4th year, which would normally be your last year of undergraduate, is actually your first year of med school. So after you finish the first year of med school at USF's med school, then you're considered to have had, earned your bachelor's degree. But it's almost at the very end of freshman year that you have to email a declaration of your intent. And you have to have maintained, you have to be in the honors program there, you have to have maintained a 3.6, which is like having, let's say, 4 A's and 1 B. And by your 2nd year, you have to have maintained a 3.7. You do go through applying to their med school, and you apply, right after your sophomore year. You still have to take, the MCAT, the medical college admission test. There's still a bunch of ifs, ands, and buts, but essentially, these are kids who had, you can see at the bottom, very high, GPAs, especially in math and science. And the MCAT score of 518 is a pretty high score. It's not crazy sky high, but it's a pretty high MCAT score. But they have other double degree programs that are more straightforward with pharmacy and with nursing. And they also have a wonderful relationship with LECOM, which is the Lake Erie College of Medicine, where kids can do a double degree program with them as well. So they have quite a few double degree healthcare, I'd say, related programs. The Honors College is physically a brand new building, but they also have, a new wellness center and an innovation building with 2 new majors, hospitality being one of them, which would make sense. Tampa is the largest city on the west coast of Florida, so lots of hotel rooms there. It would make sense that hospitality would be a pretty important major there. They've also raised themselves more in the rankings of U.S. News than any other state university in the last 11 years. And U.S. News actually ranked them as the number 3 state university here, in Florida. Lots and lots of research opportunities, and especially in medicine. In fact, there are 4 hospitals that are either on campus or right next to campus. And very interesting thing about U.S. patents. There are very few colleges that have where the students have gotten more patents than they have. And you can see that the other schools that have gotten more patents are incredibly prestigious, hard to get into schools like MIT and Stanford. And Tampa is itself a very tech city, so it's a great place for studying anything that is technology related. And there is a partnership with the Center for Disease Control, and this especially became important during COVID. Whew. Our last one, University of West Florida. So University of West Florida is our only state university that's in a different time zone, by the way. And they are a lot closer to Alabama than they are here to Southern Florida. These are their top majors for kids who just, who entered this year. And again, lots of research. You can see research is a byword through pretty much all of our state universities. Tremendous emphasis on career preparation and service learning. They also have an honors program like all of our other state universities do. One of the cool things about University of West Florida is that downtown is just minutes away. The beaches are right there. It also does not play in the NCAA Division I. They play in Division II. They were national champions several years ago. They've won a number of championships, and they have the most scenic stadium of all the NCAA schools because they're right on the water. If you love nature, the outdoors, biking trails, woods, forests, paths, walking, then University of West Florida is a very cool place because of all the biking and hiking that you can do, and nearby between volleyball and disc golf. And it's just a very cool outdoorsy place to be. Weather is very, very different than it is here in South Florida. And they enrolled their 2nd largest class this past year. Again, known for social mobility, known for nursing. And they give lots and lots of scholarships as long as you put your application in by December 1st, where you will be considered whether you're in state or out of state. And Alabama kids are pretty much considered like Florida kids here because they're so close to Alabama. But, based on your GPA and test score consideration, which pretty much means you'll probably get it, these pretty significant scholarships. I'm going to stop and see if there's a couple more questions to answer.
Other than UF, what Florida universities actually have fraternity sorority houses where students live?
I don't know the answer to that question. You stumped me. Who else has fraternity sorority houses? I believe FSU, but I can't remember, who else actually has the houses. But we will, again, if you send me an email, we can poll the colleges and see if we can get you an answer to that question.
Do you think the politics at New College will affect the education?
Do I think the politics will affect the education? I think the education is going to change a little bit. I think it's still going to be very small, very hands-on. There will still be, professors very, very liberal-minded. I think there will be some more conservative things introduced, maybe to balance it. Lots of people are happy about this. Lots of people are unhappy about this. Very mixed reaction, and I'm not going to get politically involved.
Does UF consider Florida residency, or are all students evaluated the same?
Well, they claim that all students are evaluated the same, but like FSU, I'm going to say that the admit rate probably, for in-staters is very different than the admit rate for out-of-staters, because remember, Florida is limited in general to 10% out-of-staters. Compare that to someplace like, let's say, University of Michigan, where a third of all kids are out-of-staters, although it's much harder still for an out-of-stater to get into Michigan than for, an in-stater. If I look at the UC schools, University of California, most of their schools are only about 10%. Most of their schools are about 10% out-of-staters, and it is harder for an out-of-stater, to get in. And I think because of the rankings, UF and FSU have been especially attractive to out-of-state students.
My son is a U.S. citizen and former Florida resident graduating from high school in South America. Can he apply to FSU to study abroad for the first year?
Yes, anybody can apply to study abroad in the first year for FSU.
You can go on.
Okay, so there's other pathways, other ways to sort of get into our universities. You may want to take a picture of the screen to have it, but one of the downloads is, no, I take it back. The downloads are not doing this one, but these are the programs that, other than CARE, I believe you don't actually apply to, but you get selected, and they're basically for disadvantaged students who can get into, most of our state universities through one of these programs. CARE is the one that you actually physically file an application to. The others you're selected for. So we're pretty lucky living here in Florida, besides the fact that we have 12 amazing state universities, all completely different from each other, all different sizes, all different levels of competition. We also have 28 state colleges. They're formally community colleges. They're formally two-year schools. These are all, I believe all, are now four-year schools. Significantly easier to get into. Pretty much high school diploma is what's required, and having the right distribution of the, English, math, science, etc. courses. But if you go to let's just say you're dying to go to, FSU or UF or UCF or USF or any of the schools, but you just can't get in because, you maybe have a 3.2 GPA. You're primarily a B student with a few A's, very few honors or AP courses, maybe 1,100 on your SAT. So things that don't necessarily get you into are harder to get into state universities. You can go to any one of our 28 state colleges. And if you follow the AA track, AA just means Associate of Arts, and it doesn't mean art as in visual or performing art. It's just like arts and sciences. You can major in English, you can major in math, you can major in pretty much anything you want, but you're following a particular course of action. If you earn your AA degree, you are guaranteed admission into one of our 12 state universities automatically. Not necessarily the university of your choice. So it doesn't mean, I'm going to get into UF automatically. No, it doesn't necessarily mean that, but it does mean that you will be getting into one of our state universities as long as you have your AA degree. You've earned 60 credit hours. You're going to transfer over, as a junior. And by the way, the easiest way to transfer into any one of our state universities is to have an AA degree from one of our state colleges. However, there are certain programs that exist, and I'll just talk briefly about TCC to FSU. That's you start at Tallahassee Community College. It's actually now called Aspire TCC to FSU, where you're pretty much guaranteed admission to FSU if you meet the requirements of doing all of the TCC to FSU program. So if you're dying to go to FSU, it's the only school in the whole world for you, but you know that you don't have, the statistics to be able to get in. You can start at the Aspire program. You declare your intention to be part of this Aspire program, and you follow a particular track. You're automatically guaranteed admission to FSU after you complete your associate's degree. Basically, you're doing 2 full years. So this is one of the downloads, is actually the newest information available on all of these, transfer programs that if you know for sure which one of our state universities you want to go to, that can assure that you're getting into that particular state university. So I do want to just show you in summary how our state universities stack up against all the other colleges in America. So starting just with the national rankings, I told you that UF is ranked the number 5 state university in the country. The only state universities that are ranked higher, that doesn't mean that they're better, by the way, it just means that they're ranked higher. University of California, Berkeley, and UCLA, University of Michigan, University of Virginia, and then, of course, University of Florida's number 5. Now, the interesting thing, there's 25 other state universities, don't necessarily care who they are, but right after them comes FSU. So FSU is the number 31 state university in the whole country. So FSU is ranked way up there with University of Florida. Okay, 9 of our 12 state universities are ranked by U.S. News and World Report. Some of them quite high, but this again gives you reason to understand why the Florida State University system is ranked the number 1 state university system in the entire country. Florida Gulf Coast, this is, I believe, its first year being ranked nationally, not just regionally. So once they've ranked 330 colleges, the next 110 colleges are ranked between 331 and 440, but not given an exact number, and they're just listed alphabetically. So Florida Gulf Coast is in that number. 2 of our schools are ranked regionally. So Florida Poly, University of West Florida. There are certain requirements that U.S. News has in terms of whether you're ranked nationally or regionally. And one of them is ranked in the liberal arts rankings. And those are the liberal arts rankings are the places where you're going to see places like, let's say, Amherst, Williams, Pomona, small liberal arts colleges that don't generally have graduate schools. Although I believe New College just started its first graduate degree. Okay, 9 of our colleges are ranked as having top business programs. So that's pretty amazing. And all 12 of our state universities are ranked in engineering. And again, remember that FAMU and FSU are ranked together because they share the engineering program. So some of our state universities are ranked in one list where you can actually earn a doctoral degree in engineering. And 8 of them are ranked where you can earn a doctoral, and 4 of them are ranked where your highest degree is either a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. So I think that's pretty cool that Florida's the place to come for engineering. And let me add that if you found, this presentation informative, hopefully you're going to enjoy our other presentations. These are, you can all clickable, on our website. If you go to scorewebinars.com, you're going to get lots of information about test optional and selective college admission, and very important one, especially if you're a junior or younger, about the future of testing, specifically about the digital SAT. And in fact, one of our downloads is the comprehensive overview I've written to the digital SAT. And if you're in the middle of writing your essays for college college applications and you're struggling in any way, please listen to our webinar about the college applications that work. During it, we read several really great personal statements, a couple supplemental essays, and tell you how to go about brainstorming, coming up with ideas and the kinds of things that work and don't work. So let me see if there are just a few other questions that I can answer for you right now.
Nothing's really come in. Let me go back through because there were some from earlier. You mentioned that a single D on a transcript is a kiss of death. Were you referring only to FSU, or were you talking about all Florida colleges?
Okay. So when I said that a D is a kiss of death, I was referring to FSU. It doesn't mean you will definitely not get in if you have a D. It depends when you got that D, what that D was in, and if there was something, some valid reason. I mean, perhaps you were out with mono and you missed, 4 weeks of the beginning of chemistry, but you have since done outstanding work in your other sciences. And although they don't take recommendations, it doesn't stop your counselor, let's say, from calling admissions and talking to the rep for your county to explain why you got that grade. I would say that having a D makes it very hard to get into UF, probably USF and UCF, again, unless there was a good reason for it, and hopefully it wasn't like a junior year D.
What can be done to increase a student's chances of getting accepted to UF? My son is only focused on UF. He has a 4 or 5 GPA and will get an IB diploma. 32 ACT, marching band throughout high school, has volunteered with the same organization monthly for years. And we keep getting told his chances are very slim. Okay. So no one's chances are great for getting into University of Florida. Remember, because it catapulted to the top 5 in U.S. News and World Report, it's getting a lot more competition from both in-state kids and out-of-state kids. So this student who was just described as having an incredibly high GPA, test scores that are in range, and some great extracurricular, is the kind of student that UF is looking for. And I think what will make the difference is, writing a spectacular personal statement that makes it look like this young person will be a wonderful addition to the campus, a great contributor to the campus life, that additional information that's presented in terms of commitment to an extracurricular activity, a meaningful extracurricular activity will be incredibly helpful. I would say that this student's chances are excellent. I'd apply for summer rather than for fall. Even though they say it's no easier, I would probably apply for summer. I think fewer kids do apply for summer. But I'd also be applying to FSU, UCF, USF, cover all your bases and perhaps a backup, like FAU or Florida Gulf Coast. Does UF have a supplemental essay?
I believe that UF has an extra essay asking you to elaborate on one of your most meaningful extracurricular activities. And it does not mean reciting, soccer was my most meaningful extracurricular activity because blah, 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 blah. In fact, if you were to listen to my our webinar on the college application essays, we actually do read an essay about a meaningful extracurricular and go into what makes that kind of an essay a really strong one. So I believe that that's still in the University of Florida application.
Are universities able to see the other university students, see where they've applied, and their students' preference order?
Okay, so that's a great question. If I'm applying to college X, does college X also know that I've applied to A, B, C, and D? The answer is no. Colleges do not know where else you have applied. However, many college admission officers are good friends with each other. They travel together. They talk to each other all the time. So who knows whether one college admission officer says, hey, did that Judi Robinovitz apply to you? Because she applied to me. I think that might be much more likely to apply at a very highly selective level. So colleges don't know where else you're applying.
Will the digital SAT be super scored?
Yes. The question is, will the digital SAT be super scored? College Board is anticipating that universities will super score the digital SAT with the paper-based SAT because they claim that the scores are perfectly comparable.
That's all we got.
Oh my God, thank goodness. Of course, if you have any questions, honestly, you could just send it to info@scoreatthetop.com. I want to thank you all. Those of you who are actually listening will, or who signed up for this, will get an email with a link so that you can go back. I know I had to go very, very fast, but you'll get a link so that you could play the recording and see the slides. Thank you so much, and I hope you'll think about calling us for educational consulting. We do work individually, with students in addition to the boot camps that we do it at different high schools. Or please call us for SAT or ACT prep or tutoring or courses for credit. Thanks so much, and I wish everyone a lovely evening. Good night.